you, Nancy. Oh, uh, Jim, I don't know if you are saying anything or if I can get started.
No, we just wanted to let you and everybody know that this is being recorded. So I think you're good to go.
Great. And since this is a smaller group, I am less worried about holding questions to the end. So you should feel free to interject if I say something and you want me to clarify or answer it in the moment. I don't mind. And yeah, so let's see if I can advance my slides. Oh, here we go. All right, so yeah, Nancy already introduced me, but just to introduce myself again, I'm Stephanie. I use she, her pronouns. I am the California Regulatory Director with Vote Solar, and I am living in Oakland, California, but I am born and raised in Southern California. I grew up in San Diego. I have family in Santa Monica. I've spent a lot of time in LA, so very happy to be with you all today. And as Nancy mentioned, before coming to work in the California space, I spent 6-7 years in DC working on federal climate and energy policy. And for the last 2 years, have been working in California on solar and solar related issues, mostly in the regulatory space, weighing in at the California Public Utilities Commission, and a few other agencies. And this is the agenda for today. I'm gonna just give a really quick intro to Vote Solar and what we do, give a brief overview of what community solar is, since I think it gets confused a lot, and then talk about a bill that was passed last year, AB 2316, and the current opportunity to expand community solar in California. And then finally, we'll let you know how you all can help with that effort. So before I dive into community solar, I just wanted to give a brief overview of what Vote Solar does. So we are a 501c3 that works at the state level to repower our communities with sun and build a thriving clean economy with affordable solar for everyone. So we really focus on equitable solar and clean energy policies a lot of the time at the regulatory level across the country, but also at the legislative level. We use deep policy expertise weighing in at proceedings, coalition building, and public engagement to help build a just and inclusive, clean powered future. And like I said, I've been with Vote Solar for about 2 years now. So community solar. So I'm going to start this off by giving a little bit of an overview of California's energy mix, because I think it helps with the context. So on the right is the overall state energy mix. So you can see we still have about 1/3 of our energy coming from natural gas. Solar is right here, and then wind. And then on the left, this is our local resource adequacy. So this is what our energy mix is in our transmission constrained parts of the grid, particularly when there's really high peak demand, or if there's issues, emergencies on the grid, if a transmission line goes down, or like in the evening peak hours. And you can see that natural gas is a huge part of our energy mix still, which is not great. It's a little concerning. And particularly when it comes to local resource adequacy, this natural gas usually comes from peaker plants, which tend to be dirtier and less efficient than our other gas plants. And we really believe that community solar can offer not just benefits from going solar, which I think most people can probably understand and guess, but in addition to the traditional benefits, we can help relieve some of this pressure by having local clean generation that can offset some of this need to run peaker plants. And I'll go into that a little bit more, but I just wanted to give the context of why we think this is such an integral part of California's energy mix. And part of that is because community solar projects are built on the distribution grid rather than off transmission lines. So they are closer to the load. The other issue that community solar helps to solve is that a lot of people can't go solar. So plenty of people own their own homes, are able to afford solar, but plenty of people cannot. So on the left here is just, it's a little outdated, but just showing the increase in folks who rent as opposed to homeowners over the last few years. That number has only gone up. More than half of the US population live in multifamily unit buildings, like an apartment with a shared roof. And in California, that's 17 million people who rent. And often if you're a renter, if your landlord doesn't want to go solar, you don't really have any other great options. In addition to that, even people who do own their homes, 3 out of 4 of them can't host solar for a variety of reasons. Maybe you're in a shaded area, your roof isn't strong enough. There's a lot of different reasons for that. And then finally, wanted to just point out that low-income households are more likely to be renters. They're more likely to live in multifamily housing, have unsuitable roofs. And so it's a lot harder for them to access rooftop solar. So community solar can offer a really great way to get the benefits of solar without having to own your home, without having to put it on your roof. So there's a lot of different definitions of community solar, but the one that Vote Solar uses is projects that have multiple subscribers and that those subscribers receive an on-bill benefit that's directly attributable to that project. And I'll show a little chart that explains this a bit more, but basically you subscribe, you claim a portion of that solar project that's built somewhere nearby. It doesn't have to be nearby, but usually within 10 miles of your home. And then you will get the credits back on your bill for the production that solar project generates. And what this does is it expands access. So like I said, it enables people who can't put rooftop solar on their house to be able to get the benefits. You can sign up. You don't have to tell your landlord. It's just directly up to you. It can overcome physical barriers if you have issues with rooftop solar. It promotes equity in that, like I said, it's much more accessible, and you don't have to put upfront a ton of money to purchase or to join. And then additionally, as I mentioned, it provides that local reliability that can help reduce the peak load, which means we don't have to run our gas plants quite as often in those peak evening hours. And then finally, another really unique part of community solar projects are they have the potential to be community owned. So most projects are owned and run by solar developers, which is totally fine. But there's a lot of models for how a local community can own the project and enable the benefits to go to their local community directly, in addition to just on-bill benefits. So as far as how it actually works, so a community solar project will be built and generate solar the same way you would from a rooftop solar project. And individuals, local businesses, schools, households can sign up to claim a portion of that project that matches their energy use for a specific number of panels or a percentage. It sort of depends on the project. And you can either purchase them, like I said, up front, or you can do a subscription model, which is what's the most common version of this, where you pay a subscription fee and your bill credits come out of that. And at the end, you just see one credit on your energy bill every month. And yeah, the basic gist is that you don't need it on your roof and you can still get the benefits of it back on your utility bill. And I'll go into a little bit about the specific community solar proposal in California and what those numbers look like. But yeah, just to drive this home again, these are additional benefits of community solar. A lot of these are also from rooftop solar, but again, it can also create local well-paying jobs to build these projects. If you are a renter, a student, you're someone who moves around a lot, this is a really good option because you can either take your subscription with you or you can leave pretty easily. Many projects will have a local business as kind of like the anchor, so they may claim half of it and the other half is open for households, so that there's kind of a guarantee user base. And then additionally, as I mentioned, it's particularly wonderful for renters who don't need to go through their landlord and can still get the benefits without having to deal with a landlord or finding somewhere to put panels. So in California, we currently don't have a wide-scale community solar program. And this is unique because I think, as many of us know, in a lot of ways, California leads on solar policy across the country. But on community solar, we have lagged pretty far behind. So there are 22 other states across the country that have functioning community solar programs. California has had a few small programs that some of them have ended up being a premium. So you pay to get the credit, like you pay to basically get clean energy. That's the GTSR. We've had two other ones, the Community Solar Green Tariff and the Disadvantaged Communities Green Tariff, which are more specifically aimed at disadvantaged and low-income communities. And in some places, those programs have worked, mostly in our CCAs, but they've been really small, very restrictive, and they haven't been able to scale up. We just haven't seen the widespread adoption of this as many other states. And in many places, the investor-owned utilities have struggled to build projects and get people subscribed due to some restrictive designs of the program, and just a lack of, honestly, some of it is just a lack of marketing and getting out the word on their part. But on the right, there is the current available and used capacity for these programs, and you'll see that there's just a lot that hasn't been subscribed to or built. I would also mention that in some of the investor-owned utilities, they have people subscribed, but they haven't actually built projects. And so people are getting credits, but there's no new generation being built. So it's more of an accounting process. And in addition, I would just add also that these programs have also been kind of costly. For an equity program, obviously that's good to pay a little bit more to help those who wouldn't be able to get solar in another situation. But there's just better ways to do it that are more effective and can scale up. And so to address the issue of the fact that California has been so far behind on community solar over the last few years, a group of organizations last year in 2022 sought to change this and work to pass a bill, AB 2316, that was from Assemblymember Ward from San Diego. And the group of organizations that came together to get the bill passed was made up of some pretty unusual alliances, I would say. We had solar developers, environmental justice advocates, ratepayer advocates, labor, and traditional green groups, all who backed this bill. And the bill basically set up a process for the California Public Utility Commission to examine our existing programs that I just talked about and decide whether to modify them or to create a new program that had to meet some requirements that were included in the bill. And one of those requirements was that any new program had to serve 51% low-income subscribers for the capacity of the program. And it also expanded the definition of low income to include Native American communities and disadvantaged communities. So it really opened up who was eligible for these projects. In addition, it also requires some labor laws and a few other things. The 51% carve out that was included in here would make California the most equitable community solar program in the country. Most other states, I think the range of carve outs is usually like 20 to 30% for low income subscribers. So it would be a pretty incredible program and would help California lead again in a place that we traditionally haven't. So after the bill was passed, it made its way to the California Public Utility Commission, which is where basically the details will be worked out. And so this happens in what's called a regulatory proceeding. And that process started in January of this year and is in its final stages. So over the last few months, parties have weighed in with proposals, have given testimony, talking about the current programs and offering suggestions for what a new program could look like. And the next step in the proceeding will be that the commission will put out a proposed decision, and then it will be open for comments again, and then they will have a vote at the CPUC where stakeholders and the public can weigh in, and then they will vote on what to do with this. And the group of organizations that helped to get 2316 passed has moved over and are now working together at the CPUC to ensure that they do create a new program. And we've been supporting a proposal called the Net Value Billing Tariff that would create this new community solar and storage program and allow it to rapidly scale up. So the NVBT was designed off of other programs across the country. There's an organization called the Coalition for Community Solar Access. They have worked across the country to create community solar programs, and they've seen what works and what doesn't, and they designed this proposal that many of our organizations are now backing. And this NVBT would establish a tariff for solar developers that would support direct bill savings for subscribers with higher bill savings for low-income subscribers. The NVBT would require that every project have storage with it for at least 4 hours of storage, which means that these projects are not only benefiting the subscribers, but they're benefiting our grid overall by providing that energy in our peak hours when we most need it. The NVBT is much more cost effective than the current smaller programs because it is based on avoided cost, which is something that the commission has been paying a lot of attention to lately. Some other benefits and additional points about the NVBT is that this would establish minimum bill credits for low-income subscribers that start at about 20 to 25% of the bill credit. So this doesn't translate directly to 25% off your bill. What that ends up looking like is between $25 to $35 a month off a bill, which is not a lot, but it is substantial, especially for low-income folks for whom their energy burden is really high. The net value billing tariff also includes simplified billing, which I talked about at the beginning, but is basically where instead of having to pay your subscription fee to the developer, and then they send you a check, and then you still have to pay your utility bill over here, it all gets done behind the scenes, and you just see a bill credit on your utility bill every month, which makes it a lot easier for people to understand, and it just simplifies things. In addition, the NVBT would not allow for using credit scores or fees for low-income subscribers. So if you have to move or you no longer want to participate, you're able to drop out without having to be penalized. Like I mentioned, it requires 4 hours of storage for every project. Our group of organizations is also asking that the 51% of the program be a 51% per project requirement, which means that every project would serve at least 51% low income subscribers. And then finally, the last piece, which I think is really important and I can talk about more if people are interested, is I'm sure many people have heard of the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed by Biden last year or 2 years ago. There is a ton of money in there for community solar, including tax credits for developers if they build projects in certain areas, if they provide benefits to low income and disadvantaged communities. And there's also $7 billion available for states to apply for funding, showing they are increasing access through community solar. So this program would really enable California to take advantage of all of those funding pots, meaning that not only can the NVBT do all of this, but it can do more. We can offer more savings. We can incentivize community-owned projects, and we can incentivize projects that would otherwise be more expensive if we can add funding that comes from this federal money.
Hey, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Just while we're on it, one of our, Leslie Purcell, asked if you could define the acronym NVBT again, please.
Yeah, of course. It's the Net Value Billing Tariff. I think I have it here. Probably should have made that bigger. It's kind of a, wonky name. I'm sure folks maybe know that NEM, the net metering, is now called the Net Billing Tariff. So this is sort of a version of that. And this is really the point I wanted to bring to all of you, and then I'm happy to take questions and we can talk about this more. But right now, the CPUC, like I said, is weighing whether to initiate this program or not, or just modify the existing programs. They could also decide to do nothing and leave things the way they are. And we really see this as an incredible opportunity to expand solar access for renters and for those for whom have just been left out of the solar boom that we've had in California. And we really need people to let the CPUC and the governor's office know that they shouldn't just take the easy way out on this and really should initiate this new program. So particularly asking for support for the net value billing tariff proposal, in order for us to enable access to the benefits of solar, it can help reduce our reliance on gas peaker plants and allow us to take advantage of those billions of dollars, as I mentioned, from the federal funding. So you can reach out now to commissioners and the governor. I would also recommend, if you are interested in supporting this, that you can sign up on our website, votesolar.org. If you scroll all the way down, you can sign up, and we send out California specific updates and really easy actions, so that when this actually goes to the vote, you will get alerted and you can call the CPUC during the actual voting meeting and support this. And with that, I'm happy to open it up, answer questions. Yeah, thank you all.
Stephanie, that was great. Thank you. Thank you so much. You really took a very complicated subject and covered it in a very concise manner. So I really appreciate it. As Nancy said earlier, my name is Jim Dodenhoff. I'm on the Energy Advisory Board for Climate Action Santa Monica. As we have asked before, if you have any questions, please do what Leslie did, which is post them to the chat, and we'll pick those off. I have quite a number of questions, Stephanie, and it's only because I'm so interested in this. So if it's okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump in.
Yeah.
But again, I just want to really thank you for covering a very complicated subject in a very concise manner. And of course, Stephanie's presentation, as well as her talk, will be available on CHASM's website. I guess one thing I want to start with, as you know, Stephanie, Santa Monica and Culver City, where I live, are both have opted into CCAs. Our CCA is the Clean Power Alliance. And I'm just sort of curious, a starting question as to, are the CCAs supportive of this? Is this something that they see can help them continue down the clean energy path? Have they joined arms with other folks who are pushing it, or where are they at on this particular proceeding?
Yeah, that is a great question. There's obviously a wide variety of CCAs, and they have their own associations. And I will say that I have talked to a few of them directly, and then they've obviously filed their own opinions in the proceeding itself. They are, I would say, not unsupportive, but they have not fully backed the NVBT. And part of that is, for a lot of them, their green tariff and their DAC programs are working. They are building projects, they are subscribing people. For some of them, these programs are newer. And so when I talked to them, they were like, we just haven't really had the time to fully evaluate if they're working or not. So I think there's some of that of like, wait, we're doing it well, so why are we going to shake this up? A few of them have asked for the CPUC to modify the programs to expand those smaller programs that I talked about, open them up more, expand who's eligible, which could definitely alleviate some of the issues, but I don't think would alleviate all of it completely. The other issue that I've heard from CCAs is that this definitely complicates things on their billing side. Like if you live in a CCA, but you're subscribed to something through your IOU, you just have another party now to deal with all the different billing that goes on. So they're not against it, but I would say they're a little more hesitant and want to see their programs continue.
Thank you. Could you do me a favor? Could you get your slide deck, that table you put out, the one that kind of shows the DAC program? Yep. I just want to put that up there and mention to the group that, Climate Action Santa Monica, Stephanie, you may or may not know this, considered the possibility of being a sponsor for a program under the CSGT or the DAC-GT. And we found many of the restrictions that you referred to as being real barriers to success in this program, thus need for change. This is my opinion, not Stephanie's, but that chart that Stephanie's put forth there suggests to me that there's a lot of approval and a lot of capacity out there for the existing programs, but not a lot of sort of shovels in the ground. And so I'm a little hard pressed to understand how a CCA might think the existing program has been successful. But and here's the data to prove it. But anyway.
We've heard that about the CSGT in particular, that like there was an effort to make it more community based, and in doing that, the restrictions are so high that developers are basically like, this is too much upfront money that we're not able to do this. And so the idea with the NVBT is to still provide all those benefits to the communities that need it with a lot less restrictions, and just open it up more. And allow it to scale.
I couldn't agree more with the need for change. So let's talk a little bit more about a brass tacks issue, the issue of billing. So, I look at this and I say to myself, gosh, a lot of people don't really even understand their utility bills This appears neat. My experience has been that utilities are generally opposed to any sort of changes to their utility bills because they work so hard to get it in their form and format. Add to that in CCA cities, you've got their part of it. I understand what you're trying to prove, or what the program is trying to prove out. Are we going to get cooperation from the billers, so to speak, to make it happen if it is passed by the commission?
Yeah, that is also a great question. I would say that yes, the billing is definitely trickier, but I would say that it's not much more tricky than the new NEM tariff or some other more complicated billing systems that we have. The IOUs are currently using that as a major reason to block this. They're basically saying it would cost them billions and billions of dollars and take them 20 years to set this up, which is ridiculous because other states have done it. They have equally as large territories. But a lot of the billing side of it will land on the developers. Obviously, the IOUs have to execute it, but the groups that have supported this have taken a lot of pains to include consumer protections in this NVBT that would require developers to thoroughly and very clearly explain to subscribers how this works, what your bill is going to look like, particularly for that reason that you said, of people don't already have difficulty understanding their bills. And this would be another line item basically on their utility bill. In other states, when you've had it be separate, it creates a lot more confusion. And so the idea of the simplified billing is to try to make it easier. But I totally agree. I mean, it's not straightforward. So there would definitely be a timeline to get it up and running and make sure things are working. I think the utilities are using it as a way to stall, which is particularly aggravating when we have all this money on the table that isn't going to be there in the next year. A lot of this federal money from the IRA, the grants are only open one time and the state has to apply and then it goes away. And so we've been trying to show that utilities can do this. They have a lot of money. They can figure out how to make this work. And that they should be doing it quickly if they want to be able to take advantage of this funding.
Again, I just want to provide an echo and support. You're right. It's about will, in my opinion. I worked at Southern California Edison in 2008 through 2013 on an on-bill finance program, and kind of heard the same sort of things about, can you run debt payments across an electricity bill? They do, they can. And it's actually not that terribly complicated. It just has to do with the will to do it. Where it's a little trickier maybe is the CCA involvement, but I don't see it as being a game stopper. I can understand why that might be part of the regulatory strategy. Let me switch gears a little bit. One of the things that CHASM has done, Lorene Von Klan, the executive director, has spent a lot of time here, along, I think, with some of the Climate Corps folk, is really trying to understand who owns the buildings, who owns stuff. And I think one of the findings that they've had is that there's some concentration there. That in Santa Monica, which has a very high proportion of multifamily dwellings, the ownership of that is concentrated within less folks than you might think. And so I'm kind of curious, and if you said it, I apologize, where the property managers, the folks who own this building stock, are at with respect to community solar, recognizing that the solar might not be on their roof, but they still have the tenants in their building?
Yeah. I sort of have 2 points to this. So one of the groups that has been supportive is the building SBUA, which is, I can't remember the acronym, but the building association. And they're supportive because there was a law passed that all new construction has to include solar. And
Right.
they see this as a way to abide by that without necessarily having to put it on the rooftop if that's not the cheapest option. So they're supportive of this as a way to meet the requirements that they are under, but it may be cheaper for in some options to build a community solar project rather than putting solar on every single new roof. The second point would be that community solar can be on the ground. It can also be on rooftops. And actually, a lot of community solar projects in urban areas are built on warehouse rooftops because they're big, they're wide open, they're flat. And in California, those projects are more expensive than building on the ground. And so part of the effort that we are working to try to get this federal money is to help offset some of those costs so that we can get more projects built on rooftops in urban areas. They just cost a little more because you have to rent the roof and there's a battery that can't go on the roof, but it has to go nearby. But in general, the building trades at least have been supportive of this. I think they see it just as another option to meet the compliance that they're being asked to meet. If you put a community solar project on a roof, that building doesn't necessarily have to be subscribed to it. They can just, rent their roof out to the developer, but they can also subscribe to it. So there's sort of multiple benefits and multiple ways these projects can be built. I forgot to mention they're usually between like 2 and 5 megawatts. So yeah, there's a great opportunity to bring these projects on rooftops, but share the benefits beyond just that direct roof. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
I know you're talking about.
No, it does. Well, one of the interesting things about Santa Monica that you may or may not know is that with respect to this trade-off between on roofs versus on the ground is the airport will be closing, I think, in about 5 to 6 years. And of course, a lot of folks see some future use to that very ample space. But, I, for one, certainly think that partially, at least, solar might be an interesting use. So we'll see what happens. But I think, in other cities, in most cities in Southern California, most cities in California along the coastline, there just isn't a lot of space. So having it on the roof makes a lot of sense. I want to elevate just a little bit because your background is really impressive, and both at the federal level and at the California level. And this is more of a curiosity. It's a little bit off script, but I thought the chart about natural gas use was interesting, not surprising. I think we tend to think of our state as being very green, but it turns out we generate quite a bit of electricity from natural gas, as you showed. I'm just kind of curious, clearly the decision makers made a decision to prolong the life of, I think, 3 coastal natural gas plants to 2006. And I think that was done because of some perceptions. But I'm curious as to how Vote Solar is kind of looking at that. Because on its face, at least, it really strikes me as sort of counter to the direction the state is trying to go in terms of net zero carbon, et cetera, et cetera. So, but clearly some sentiments, at least within political bodies, look at the world a bit differently. So I wanted to get vote. I'm not going to put you on the spot, but
Oh no, I don't mind.
What's Vote Solar's take on that?
Yeah, we think it's bad. It's bad policy. We're spending $1.2 billion to extend the life of those plants, and we could spend 1.2 billion on a lot of other things that would get us closer to our goals. Demand response, more storage. I mean, there's so many other ways to spend that money. There was a great report put out by the Regenerate campaign, which is Sierra Club and the California Environmental Justice Alliance, showing that those gas plants that they extended are also the least efficient, and like they don't even operate well when they're being called to operate. And so it's frustrating. I think from what I've seen, the pressure on the politicians in California to keep the lights on is very, very, very high. And they are very, very, very scared of that happening. And they're willing to do the easy way out of that, which is keeping fossil fuels around, because the alternative is a little harder. But we need to get there. I think they're just feeling, to me, it's just fear. It's a lot of political fear around blackouts and the pushback they've gotten on that over the years. And this is an easy way for them to say they're doing something. But at the end of the day, we're keeping the lights on the backs of people that live near those plants. Like,
yeah,
yes, it keeps the lights on, but people are paying for that with pollution, and we know there are better alternatives. So, yeah, we were disappointed, and we've been trying to, offer these other solutions like community solar and demand response and all these other options that we know are on the table that can help alleviate those pressures and reduce our reliance on gas peaker plants. So I see.
The comment that you made is, I think, spot on. Not to go down a political road, but you just get the sense amongst the politicians, amongst CAISO, that rolling outages or enforced outages are an absolute no-fly zone when we have many other no-fly zones. Like when we get a lot of rain, roads break,
yeah,
and bridges break. And when we have earthquakes, there's damage done. We seem to be willing to risk those no-flies or those areas, but blackouts are a political no-fly zone, which is really kind of unfortunate, I think. But
yeah, well, and it's not even accurate. Like the natural gas plants don't operate well. They're also causing blackouts. So
yeah,
it's sort of yeah. I saw Kent has his hand up, so I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, and I've got another question too. Go ahead, Kent.
Yes, I think Jim referred to Chasm's efforts to facilitate a community solar program in our area here, and the barriers we ran into in trying to pull that off. And I seem to recall there was one potential host, if you will, for a solar roof that was just outside of the geographic area that the community would be served by. And I'm wondering if the NVBT proposes to loosen up that particular restriction to allow a little more flexibility in that regard.
Yeah. I believe the way it's currently written is there would be no geographical restrictions. I imagine the commission will probably put something like they'll want it in some region close to who's being served. But yeah, that was one of the major problems, was it was too restrictive, and like you were just outside the boundary and it wasn't that immediately major project not eligible. So yes, the NVBT would not have those geographical restrictions. There's been a proposal, I think, from Public Advocate's Office to restrict projects to serving their LRA. So projects, as long as they're in the local reliability area, that would be allowed and is the restriction, which is a bigger area, but it's still, you may still run into those boundary issues. But yeah, I would also mention that the CCAs, I think in their proposal to modify the programs, have also asked that that get lifted. So for sure, that's one of the major problems that people have been having.
Great, thanks.
Hey, Stephanie, a couple chat items I want to make sure get aired out. So Wes talks about as a potential for community solar, how about covering water supply sources with floating solar to reduce evaporation? I think he's saying, could that be an example? Can you use car parking ports and garages as a host site for community solar?
I think all
yeah.
those are options. Yep.